Well, if you, kind of dig deeper into what you said in terms of your priority of establishing a culture, right out of the gate, uh, what were some of your priorities in terms of what that culture was going to look like, and uh, some of the things that you really focused on with the guys once you had your guys in there? How did you go about kind of trying to create an environment that promoted that culture and pushed a particular set of kind of focus points?
I think right off the bat in the summer, we defined kind of what, our core values, what we wanted to be about, and then what that looked like on the court and what that looked like off the court, starting with like compete. Like, the foundation of everything we want to do is compete. And we defined it as giving max effort and focus. So we spent a lot of time in the locker room, in the summer, in the first couple of weeks, just talking about what does this look like? If you're competing in a team meeting, what does it look like? If you're competing on the court, are you giving max effort? And can you also be focused and listen to what's going on? And we talk about, look, that's the base of who we want to be. To have a chance to be the best version of yourself, to have a chance to be the best version have the best team possible, you got to be able to give your best. I mean, let's start right there. And then I think as we went on and we layered in what the next level, what it looked like, it was my job, and our staff did an amazing job kind of holding guys accountable to it. At the top of our, pyramid, if you will, of our core values is give. And it's like we talk about at the end of the day, you can be the best, you can give your best, right? But in this game, and really in life, you can't achieve greatness or do something legendary unless you give, unless you go outside yourself. And we talked about, what that means is we define it as lifting others. So how you do it on the basketball court, it's simple, not easy, but it's simple. You make the right play, make the next best right play every time. That's hard to do, as you know, and that's something we talked about, and we showed it on the court of this is how we're showing how we give. Talk about things off the court as well. But I think the guys just bought in. We did a great job of structuring what we wanted it to look like. And instead of just words on the wall in the locker room, we tried to be more really intentional about how those words define them, and then how they, what they look like, in your everyday life. And then, the last part is holding them accountable to that.
Yeah, and holding accountable is, kind of the ultimate, kind of equalizer in anything that you're trying to establish. And that's evolved a lot in terms of, what the parameters look like. So how does that, kind of process for you as a coach that's been, in this for a couple decades and is, pre-NIL, pre-transfer portal, and now currently dealing with, the current landscape? Does the accountability process in your mind change at all to kind of navigate the fact that, players are oftentimes, so easily, in a position to move on to the next program if they don't like where they're at, how much they're playing, what their role is? How do you kind of address that and still maintain the necessary accountability to create that kind of a culture?
I think it's a good question. I think the first part of accountability is, comes with like knowing who you are. And accountability for you, Phil, might look different than it does for me. Might look different than it does for Mick Cronin, right? One of the best coaches in the country. I mean, everybody, I think one of the things about being a head coach is really knowing who you are. And accountability is not easy. It can be, managed in a lot of different ways. But once you set a standard of what you believe in, sticking to it, I think is hard at times. I think I've gotten better at it, being transparent over my careers as a head coach. And I think it's something you can always, evolve to. Well, the landscape, it hasn't really changed in terms of, in my opinion. I think most coaches are still trying to coach kids the right way or hold them accountable. We've gotten to the point where leaving after 1 year is so common that coaches are not even worried about it next. So it doesn't even come into coaches, myself's mind. Let's coach these kids as best as we can for a year, depending on who you are as a coach, what you believe in, do it to how you believe. And then you got to see what happens next year. But it's become so common that you just almost assume it, good, bad, or indifferent. Most guys are going to just, this is going to be a 1-year thing, whether you like it or not. It's just the world we live in. So I don't think it's gotten to that point where I don't think it's affected accountability. The other thing is like the NBA, I think we are seeing, right, a lot of coaches being fired kind of at weird times. And I think there's a sentiment out there that like they've lost the locker room, or that the players kind of run the locker room, if you will, right? I think in the NBA, that's somewhat more common and well known. I don't think it's gotten there in college because, and I'll tell you why, because coaches aren't being fired during the year because their star player doesn't like them.
Yeah.
Because the star players in most college places are leaving the next year, no matter what. They're not on a 10-year contract where, hey, we better make it work with LeBron James, or we better make it look with
absolutely
this guy. So I just think it's different. People want to compare it to the NBA now because guys are getting paid a lot of money at some places and all this in the transfer portal, but it's still a little bit different,
Still has that. Well, from the sounds of it, I think it's the idea of doing the best you can in the role and living with the consequences or the results in whatever capacity. And, a lot like parenting, right? You got to do what's best for them right now, regardless of how they see it. But the, kind of frequency of the two is kind of an interesting dynamic where, the concern or outcome to, and being in a program like, UIC, the more success you have with a kid, or how much success he has, the idea that may lead to, them seeking another NIL deal. Hearing a lot about that now. Do you ever kind of discuss that with guys, or is that just kind of, like you said, part of that whole, breakdown you just kind of gave everybody?
You know what? We discuss it now before the season and after the season. Once this team's here and the season starts, we won't discuss any of that kind of stuff. When after the season is over, I think a lot of coaches are getting this way. I'm very transparent, very honest, very realistic of, our situation. And I said we did a great job of building culture, and, we've had a guy or two that are leaving right now. And one in particular in my mind who absolutely loves UIC, loves me, loves our staff. We feel the same way. But he has a chance to make life-changing money. And all these young men are one injury away from it being over. And I think this goes back to your purpose. Would it be self-serving? Maybe it would be good, depending on who you ask, for me to convince him that this is the best situation for him. And it might be basketball-wise, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, the landscape we're in, the business we're in now, if you are, as a coach, care about the kids more than just as basketball players, more than transactional, then you got to look at it from a big picture. And I was the first one to say, hey, listen, I would love to have you stay, but 100%, if you can make life-changing money for your situation at your age, we totally understand, and we will be 100% supportive. And now what you're finding is when you treat, the young men like that, it's going to come back to you, and, good things happen to you. It's as goes simple as, good things happen to good people. And so it is a totally different mindset than when we were coming out of coaching, and maybe it's a totally different mindset than 4 or 5 years ago. But yeah, so we hope our guys can do great here. And the dream is that we get our program to a point where they do well. They have some NIL offers to make life-changing money, and we're able to, have the resources to have a chance to compete in that space to get them to maybe stay and make that decision hard, right?
Absolutely.
But at the end of the day, Phil, it's no different than me or you. I'd love to coach at UIC for the next 20 years. But if the Warriors offer me the head coaching job for 25 times my salary, or, I'm just, I'm exaggerating, but, I would probably, I'd probably be coaching Draymond next year. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So it's just the business we're in, and it's kind of cool. Look, it's kind of cool for some of these guys. You and I, when we were in college, could you imagine? You would have probably got a way bigger NIL deal than me. But could you imagine the opportunity to make some money in college? I mean, you and I were working odd jobs in the summer to try to make ends meet. So, and now the amount of money the guys can make in NIL from some of these schools, it's a unique thing. And, you know, we both have kids, you know, just like millions of parents. Maybe someday one of our kids or our kids' kids would be fortunate enough to be able to have a chance like some of these young men are.
Well, that's obviously a fantastic reflection in terms of who you are as a leader. And I know I'm a big believer in, as a leader, you do what's best for the people that you support and that you lead, and it will come back to you in spades, you know, from that perspective. But it starts with having the genuine desire to do what's best for them, and you know that you can't really fake that. And